filming this surrounded by flowers, and that felt fitting for what I want to share with you today, because today I'm introducing a framework I've been working on and developing for a long time. One that helps you understand where you are in your graceful living journey and how that journey ultimately leads to something many women spend years searching for, often without realizing it. And perhaps unexpectedly, that framework revolves around flowers, 6 of them, each one a distinct archetype, each one representing a different relationship between who you are on the inside and how that shows up in the life you've built around you. Today, I want to introduce you to all 6 flowers, and I want to do it by walking you through my own story, because I've inhabited more than one of these flowers over the course of my life. Understanding how I've moved through the flower garden will show you much better than any wordy descriptions how the system works. Welcome back to Gracefully Lori. I'm Lori. If you're new here, this channel is for women who want to live with intention, express themselves with authenticity, and move through the world with quiet, modern grace. Every woman on a graceful living journey is somewhere in the garden. She has a particular relationship with herself, how well she knows who she is, what she values, and what she actually wants. And she has a particular relationship with how she expresses that understanding, how much of her inner life is visible in the way she lives, the way she presents herself, and the way she moves through the world. Most of us have some version of both, but they're rarely equal, and the gap between them, or the alignment between them, tells you something important about where you are and what comes next. This framework maps that relationship across 6 distinct archetypes. 6 flowers, each one occupying a different position in the garden. A violet is deeply rooted in understanding herself, but less able to express herself. She knows herself profoundly, but her life doesn't yet fully reflect it. A jasmine is still finding both. She's at the beginning of her journey with a lot still ahead of her. A magnolia knows herself fairly well, but how she expresses that self in her daily life is beginning to catch up. She's coming into her own. And iris is engaged with the world, outwardly expressive and still deepening her connection to herself. She tends to look outward more than inward for her cues. An orchid has a striking outer presence, but she's still developing her inner roots. Her life looks beautiful, but she's working on ensuring it also feels authentic and true. And a rose is genuinely aligned. She knows who she is, and her life shows it. Every woman finds herself somewhere in the garden, and most of us have moved through more than one flower over the course of our lives. I know I have. I had an unusual childhood. My parents divorced when I was 2 or 3, and both remarried quickly, which meant I grew up moving between 2 very different worlds. Most of my time was spent in the country, in a house that was genuinely poor by anyone's standards. Every 2 weeks, I visited my father and stepmother, and through that side of my life, I came to know my stepmother, sister, and brother-in-law, people I spent a great deal of time with growing up. They also happened to be wealthy. When I would see them, I was often dressed in beautiful clothes. I attended events that many would consider formal or high society. I spent time in homes that had gardens and tennis courts and pools and croquet courts. I absorbed over the years the culture and the norms and the expectations of a world that was nothing like the one I lived the rest of the time. 2 worlds, 2 entirely different sets of norms and values, and me trying to figure out who I actually was within both of them. What I know now, and couldn't have articulated then, is that I was always self-introspective. My inner voice was present from early on, and I think it came from being a natural introvert. I followed my inner voice as much as I felt safe doing. And that made me, in the language of this framework, a violet, not a jasmine, because my inner clarity was already developing, even in the middle of all of that complexity. But the way I would express myself was often confused and constrained. I knew myself internally fairly well, but the world around me didn't always see me. They saw the clothes that had been picked out for me, the table manners I had learned, the world I seemed to belong to. As I got older and moved into my 20s, something began to shift. I started to embrace showing up in the world as me, and I began to understand how to move through the world authentically, how to communicate, how to carry myself, how to navigate the social landscape with more intention and less strain and uncertainty. I became a magnolia, guided by who I was, but beginning slowly to let it show. And then I entered the corporate world. There's a particular kind of pressure that comes with ambition in the type of professional environment I was in. You watch the people who are succeeding. You pay attention to what they do and how they do it. And somewhere along the way, almost without realizing it, you begin to wonder whether following your own instincts is still the right strategy, or whether you should simply do what the successful people around you were doing. I wanted security more than almost anything. I did not want to return to the poverty of my childhood. Financial security, professional stability, a life that felt solid. These things mattered to me in a way that was less about desire and more about a quiet fear. And so I began to emulate. I looked outward for my cues. I shaped myself around what success looked like in the environment I was in. I set aside my inner voice, not because it had gone quiet, but because I had decided for a time that it wasn't in my best interest to listen to it. At that point, I drifted into being an iris, still engaged with the world, still moving forward, but looking outward more than inward, and slowly losing my way back to myself. What I didn't understand then and came to understand over time is that my instincts were actually my greatest professional asset. The soft skills I had developed, the values I had cultivated, the clarity I had built over years of navigating two different worlds, these were what made me effective. These were what the other people around me didn't have. So I started finding my way back to myself and that inner clarity about who I was that I once had. I did that slowly, imperfectly, and over years rather than in a single moment. But there was one night that changed everything. It was Christmas. I was in my living room, sitting quietly, looking between the Christmas tree with the lights and out through the glass doors into the dark. And I looked around at the life I had built, at everything I had accumulated and arranged and managed. And I felt something I hadn't expected, a quiet distance from it. The life around me was beautiful. It was successful by almost any measure, but it had been built, I realized, around a vision I had absorbed decades earlier, from a world I had watched as a child, from people I had studied as a model, from an image of what a successful life was supposed to look like. It was a good life, a very good life, but it wasn't entirely mine. That shift and what it made possible is what I want to leave you with at the end of this video. Following that night, the first thing I changed was how much room I made in my life for joy and fulfillment. I had spent so many years working, building the security I had always craved, that I had quietly set aside the things that actually brought me alive. That Christmas, I made a list of things I wanted to do and try. Things like snow skiing. I'd never done it. Bucket list travel items I'd always wanted to do. Experiences I had constantly deferred. Things I had wanted to learn. I also looked honestly at my home, at whether the space I lived in actually reflected who I was or simply who I had been trying to become. It took time, but I eventually sold that home and built a home that was fully mine. Change of that depth doesn't happen overnight, but sometimes it begins with a single evening of honesty. And looking back, that was the night I became a rose. Your path through the garden won't look like mine. You may never have been an iris. You may be moving from jasmine directly towards magnolia. You may have been a rose for years and then found yourself pulled back towards orchid by a season of life that asked you to perform rather than express. The flowers don't always move in a single direction, and they don't demand a particular sequence. What they do is give you an honest and precise picture of where you are right now. Not where you should be, not where you used to be, where you are, and that matters because you can't close a gap you haven't named. You can't move forward if you don't know what's missing. You can't build a life that feels genuinely yours if you're still living inside someone else's vision of what your life should be. This is what the archetype system gives you. Not a verdict, a starting point. I've created a quiz that will place you in your flower. A 45-question self-reflection tool that looks honestly at 9 areas of your life and gives you a portrait of where you are right now. You'll find the link in the description and in the community tab, and I'll keep it pinned there so it's always easy to find. Take it when you're ready. Answer as honestly as you can, not as you wish things were, but as they genuinely are today. Your flower is waiting. Also, if you'd like to explore the 9 areas of your own life that I looked at that Christmas night, I've linked a self-inventory in the description alongside the quiz. So what do we achieve when we fully connect who we are on the inside with how we live our lives on the outside? We develop authentic, unshakable confidence, the kind that doesn't waver when someone disagrees with you or when circumstances change. The kind of confidence that allows you to walk into any room under any circumstances and know that you'll be all right because you trust yourself to handle whatever arises, big or small, important or inconsequential. Not the performative kind of confidence that we see all around us these days. That's what the rose has built. That's what every flower in this garden is moving toward. And that's what graceful living at its deepest actually means. So, I'd love to know, as you listen today, which flower most resonated with you? Tell me in the comments. And if you take the quiz, please come back and share your result. I love hearing about your journeys. If this resonated with you, please like the video and consider subscribing. It helps other women find content that might be meaningful to them too. Until next time, my graceful friends.